It's been a very busy week with plenty going on. With me to discuss some of the key events is Senior Market Analyst Halley from OANDA Asia Pacific. There have been some big news events coming out of the US, UK and Japan this week, and with me to discuss in more detail is Halley. Firstly, Jeff, welcome, and let's start with the US, where Trump made a big splash this week in regards to Afghanistan. And although he has made headlines across the world, few details were actually revealed. So what type of impact do you see this having on the US economy?
Hi Celeste, and it's great to be here. Yes, as far as Trump's Afghanistan announcement goes, the amount of troops, 3,000 to 4,000 I believe, is not a substantial amount on the greater scale of things. Although he does appear to have listened to his military commanders, and this may actually be the beginning of a larger scale mission creep style deployment. As far as economic impact goes though, I think it's going to be quite light. The numbers, although they are in the billions, are certainly not enough to impact the US financially going forward. I think we'd have to see a much larger scale than we are now. And bear in mind they have been there for about 15 or 16 years. I think overall the United States has a lot bigger fish to fry as far as economics go, and so I'm feeling that the impact on the US economy will be minimal to zero unless you're looking to buy defence stocks.
GDP figures saw no change from the preliminary estimate, coming in at 1.7% annually. Do you think the UK can expect to see more slow Brexit-related figures?
Yeah, GDP figures for the UK, it's a little hard to say at the moment. There is some divergence in the economy. Certainly the hiring intentions that we've seen in recent times, the data that's been coming through there is starting to show now that employers are getting a little nervous about taking on new workers simply because of the uncertainty revolving around Brexit. From an outsider looking in, the Brexit negotiations don't seem to be going that well if you're from the British side, and there does seem to be a bit of a black hole as far as information goes and moving forward. I'm not quite sure if this is really going to impact on economic growth strongly in the second half of this year. I think with the low sterling where it is now, that should continue to support economic activity and growth. What I do feel though is that it will put a cap on the currency. It's hard to see sterling moving meaningfully past 130 against the US dollar now. And we will probably continue to see strength in the euro sterling as the euro rallies well above 90 now against sterling, on its way to 95 and possibly parity should the ECB announce its intentions to start unwinding this quantitative easing policy that it's been running since 2013. So I think the main impact we will see there is on the exchange rate, and it's very hard to see it moving past 130 in the remainder of this year, in all honesty.
And moving on to Japan, consumer prices saw an increase of 0.4%. And although these figures were in line with market expectations, do you think they're good figures?
Consumer prices did rise 0.4%, and some analysts are making great store of the fact that it's 1.1% higher than the previous read. I guess that to me that seems to be a bit like clutching at straws when analysts get excited about a 0.1% increase in consumer price indices. This is Japan though, and it has had 25 years plus now of deflation, not inflation. I think this shows that the recovery in the CPI will be an extremely drawn out and long process, and it just shows the effects that deflation can have on an economy when it gets entrenched, and you can see why central bankers around the world have so aggressively fought that happening via quantitative easing when they look at Japan. I think what we have to be realistic about here is that Japan will be indulging in unconventional monetary policy for many, many, many years to come. The yield curve control being the main example of how that's being enacted at the moment. Long after the ECB's finished, long after Britain is finished, long after the Fed has consigned it all to the annals of history, I suspect that Japan will be continuing in some way or another to engage in unconventional monetary policy. What does this mean probably over the next sort of 3 to 6 months? It does mean, I think, that dollar yen will struggle to move below that 100 to 105 level, even if the dollar in general continues to weaken on a dollar index basis. And the top will probably be around sort of the 112 to 115 region, unless we see a dramatic change in Japan's monetary policy. Risks, of course, do abound with the North Korean situation, which could have a more immediate impact on markets. And in that case, if there were to be some hostilities, which we hope not to see, I feel that there's a very good chance that that would negatively impact on the yen, and we would see dollar yen trace substantially higher in the short term.
So that wraps up this week, but be sure to keep clicking back for all of the latest updates.